Hey everybody, I'm really glad you found Suncrest Messages. I do hope you'll take a minute to subscribe to either our podcast or our YouTube channel. And you can also download the Suncrest app. There's great stuff there that goes far beyond these messages. Either way, I hope that the next 30 minutes helps you integrate faith with your life. Enjoy.
Man, that's awesome. There's so many new things starting. You've seen the divorce care stuff, Starting Point, Financial Peace University. When I was watching that the first time, then I heard some others talking about it, I thought, that's the big takeaway, right? You should go to Starting Point. And then someone stopped me and said, no, the big takeaway there is you should listen to your wife. Okay, fair enough, that too. You should definitely do that too. So we're in this series about money, but before I get into it, I want to tell you a couple of things about our staff team here at Suncrest. I don't talk about them very often. We have a relatively small staff team. It's one of the things that's important to us is to keep that team small and rely on volunteers and volunteer leaders to do all kinds of real ministry to be used by God to change lives around here. So we have a pretty small team. And it's full of amazing people. Like some of you know people on our staff personally, I think you'd probably agree with me. Like these are amazing people who are doing incredible work and leading well, and it's just awesome. And I had a couple of experiences over the last couple of weeks with our team that I thought might be helpful going into this message. So 2 weeks ago, we had our all-staff meeting. We do it once a month, and I get the chance to talk to the whole staff. We work on different things. A couple of weeks ago, I started our all-staff meeting by saying, this is going to be fun. Now, whenever I say this is going to be fun to our staff, they always kind of roll their eyes at me because they know my definition of fun may not equal their definition of fun. And then what I did was I took all of our values, our mission, our vision, our values, our theology, all that, and I gave headers on a blank sheet of paper, and I said, all right, you have to fill all this in. It's a test from scratch. Doesn't that sound fun? I mean, it sounds fun to the guy up front giving the test, right? Now, here's the truth. It was fun, right? Because I said, hey, do the best you can and then talk with each other, share your answers. And in the end, we all kind of walked away more centered on what we're about, and it was an enjoyable experience. There was a lot of laughter. And I feel like that's maybe what's happening during this money series. Like if I said to you, hey, this money series, it's going to be fun. A lot of you would be like, Greg, your version of fun. Right? I get that. But by the time we're done, you're like, you know what, that actually was helpful. I can sort through that. Then this past week, we get together every Tuesday at noon, and we pray together as a team. A lot of times we pray for all of you. And then we have a quick lunch together. And I was sitting next to someone at lunch, and one of the staff was just talking about, she said, I just hate being cold. I hate being cold. Now, show of hands real quick. How many of you hate being cold? Right? Like more people than I realized. It's not that big a deal to me. My wife hates being cold, and this became a big discussion as we were having lunch together. And then this was kind of the point of like, it is miserable to be cold. It's easier to stay warm than to get warm, right? We all know that. It's easier to stay warm than to get warm, and it's miserable being cold. That principle will help you as we go through this tonight. Now, we're in the middle week of a 3-week series about money. It's called Money Talks, and we've been asking the question, if your money could talk, what would it say to you? Quick review, last week we said that your money would say to you, use me. I am a means to an end. Don't make me the goal. Don't make me the goal of life. Don't try to rack up money and stuff, but use me. In fact, Jesus said it this way. He said, I tell you, use worldly wealth to do things. And he actually said to make friendships. And to change eternity. And his whole point, again, was to say, man, you could use something that's tangible and limited and temporary, and you could kind of invest it or parlay it or like make the impact of something that's small really big. And that's powerful. And I actually think when I was thinking about this, Jesus was probably talking to the same two audiences that I'm talking to every week. Some people were followers of his and bought in and said, yep, whatever you say, Jesus, we're doing it. And other people were not followers of his and were listening for various reasons. And maybe that's the reason he said, listen, you understand how money works. It's something that's temporary. It's going to be gone. So you should use it to maximize the experience. And maybe those people who weren't followers of Jesus thought, yeah, that makes sense. Like people who are generous have more friends, and people who are stingy don't have friends. It's good to have friends. You could actually use money to help you have friends. And people who are followers of Jesus, they absolutely get this. They think, oh, eternity. Like, can you imagine? You could actually use something as temporary and simple as money, and it would shape someone's life in such a way that goes even beyond this life. And so this is the whole point. Money is there to be used. It's the means to the end. Now, let me tell you where we're going next week. I gave you the public service announcement last week. Next week, we're going to talk about giving some of your money to God. And it's a practice that followers of Jesus have done for 2 millennia now. It's a very healthy practice. It's healthy for you. It's healthy in the difference that it makes. If you're allergic to that, I guess you can skip next week. But we have a couple of frameworks, and I want you to think about this just a little bit this week before we go into next week, because we see people in a very common progression as they start to give. And a lot of people, you weren't followers of Jesus just like a year ago or 2 years ago. You're probably at the very beginning of this journey, right? So people become rookie givers. That's like, I've never given before. I'm going to try it for the first time. And then they go from being rookie givers to recurring givers, where it's just a habit of their life. Doesn't matter what the amount is. They just make sure it's a habit, a regular practice, recurring giver. They go from being a recurring giver to a relational giver, which is asking a totally different question, which is like, God, what would it look like to trust you? And then after relational giver, there's some people who are radical givers, who are giving far beyond even a 10% level of their income. And people move through that progression all the time. And next week, I'm going to ask you to think about your role in 2020 and what step you would take. I'm not going to ask you to turn in a dollar amount, but I want you to think through that progression. So that's next week, because Jesus, or the scriptures say this: on the first day of the week, each one of you should set aside a sum of money in keeping with your income. So that's next week. But this week is just uber practical. We're going to ask this question: if our money could talk, what would it say? And I'm going to get into kind of the most practical parts of your spending and your saving and your debt, and like you think about your financial life a little bit. And I always have a very similar experience when I do this kind of message. Because it is uber practical, sometimes people feel like it's the most helpful message ever, and others feel like, oh, that's kind of like a seminar. But when you break down the group of people listening to it, it's almost always like this. 30% of you, when you think about your financial life, like there's just like total peace. There's total peace. And this isn't actually about having a lot or having a little. It's about how you've handled the money that you have and whether there is stress related to it or not. And having peace about your finances is a beautiful thing. And 30% of you could probably just tune out for the rest of the message. But this is the wild experience. You might think in any message, the people who are so excited about this message the most are the ones who need it the most. But one of the things I find is that after I'm done with one of these messages, someone who has financial peace and didn't need this message at all are the most excited that I've done it, because either in their own life or other people's lives, they know the difference this makes. They used to not be in a peaceful place, and now they are, and they're like, man, I'll sit through a sermon like that all the time if other people could now experience what I'm experiencing. About a third of people are like that. About another third of people, I think the feeling around finances is kind of just a general nervousness. These are the people who live paycheck to paycheck, right? And there's like a third of people probably do this. And you're not necessarily behind right now, but the nervousness comes from this. You think, as long as nothing goes wrong, we're fine, right? And then you think, when's the last year where nothing went wrong? And you think, that's been a long time since the refrigerator didn't go out, or we didn't have to have a new car, or didn't have a medical bill or something like that. Because you're paycheck to paycheck. You're not behind, but there's not peace about it. And then probably a third of the people in here, I think Suncrest probably reflects the population as a whole, are the feeling is kind of a sinking feeling about personal finances. It's like, maybe it's embarrassment. Maybe you think, I shouldn't be where I am. I'm so embarrassed. If people knew about the amount of debt we carry on our credit card, or whatever it is, there's this feeling inside, and it's not peace. It's a sinking feeling or an embarrassment. And it's like, it's not how it should be, and you think, man, it's a lot harder to get warm than it is to stay warm. But being cold is miserable. And so, as amazing as the next 20 minutes are going to be, they're not going to be enough for the two groups of people who experience nervousness and kind of that pit in the stomach. And we have this thing called Financial Peace University. And I can tell you, Hundreds and hundreds of people at Suncrest at this stage have gone through what's called Financial Peace University. You'll walk into a room with people who are, in similar situations to you are, and it's such a powerful thing that I hope, starting this Monday night, you'd say, you know what? I could really use some help with this. Financial peace might be for me. So, if your money could talk, what would it say? I think it would say the most important thing to do with me is to pay. What do you think goes in that blank? Pay your bills. Pay your obligations. Pay your debts. Pay your mortgages. Nope, it is to pay attention. You got it right, didn't you? Yes! That's so good. That is so good. So this is a big deal. I think if your money was speaking to you, they would say, oh, pay attention. Because, the places will go. I'm going to channel a little Dr. Seuss here for you, okay? Because what your money's going to say to you is like, hey, wherever I'm going, you're going. Wherever you're going, I'm going. Oh, the places will go. So I would appreciate it if you would pay attention as we go. Now, I have a question. This is the rest of this message, just kind of a heads up, is a no more hand-raising message, okay? I know like last week I asked you to raise your hand all the time. Did you do this? This one's going to be really personal. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hands at all. So this is just think about it. Don't raise your hands, okay? But I want you to just think about this. Have you given your heart to Christ? Have you given your heart to Christ? Like, think, would I raise my hand on that? And my sense is, those of us who are followers of Jesus, those of us who are believers, there's different ways to say this, we'd say, yes, I've given my heart to Christ. And people who aren't followers of Jesus would say, no, I haven't given my heart to Christ. Now, second question, don't raise your hand on this. Have you given your money to Christ? And I don't mean you wrote a check and all your money went to the church. That's not what I mean. I mean you gave control of. You gave devotion to. You'd say, yeah, Christ is in charge of my money. And this is always a challenge for us because when Jesus speaks about this, and he speaks about money a lot in ways that don't have to do with giving at all. Sometimes they do, but not always. And this is one of the observations he makes about money. This is from the words of Jesus. He says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He says, this is what you get. This is why it's such a big deal to pay attention. Because wherever your money goes, that's where your heart goes. And you could suppose that your heart and your money are in two different places. You say, my heart's devoted to this, but my money's over here. And Jesus would say, no, that's not how it works. That is not how it works. Your heart and your money are in the same place. They hang out in the same area all the time. So one of the ways you could know where your heart is if you know where your money is going. One of the phrases I use all the time is to say, you can tell a lot about a person by the way that he or she spends money. Listen, we're not going to do this, okay? But if instead of me to hundreds, it was me and you like at your dining room table, and I brought the records of all the money I spent, the Lees spent last year, and you brought the record of all the money you spent last year, and we decided in a moment of great trust with one another to slide them across the table to each other. And I got to look at yours, and you got to look at mine. What I'm saying to you is, when I look at yours, I would know you. And you might think, you don't know me. But this is what Jesus was saying. And when you look at mine, you would know me. You would know it's important to me. You would know what I value. You would know when you see that. Because, the places we'll go together. Now, one of the things, this is the pay attention part of it, this is the places we'll go. The Proverbs give us wisdom on this. They say, the wise man saves for the future, but the foolish man spends all he gets. The wise man saves for the future. The foolish man spends all he gets. Now, one of the things I had you do last week was raise your hands. And I asked all of you, I said, how many of you had parents that taught you well about financial things. And I got to tell you, this was the most surprising part of the message last week to me, is how very few of you raised your hands. And I thought, it was like a moment of compassion toward you to say, your parents didn't do that for you? And of course, then there's this thing that runs through my mind. I hope it runs through your mind too, which is like, and some of us are parents. And if you were to ask my kids, your kids, have your parents been teaching you? But this is kind of what it comes back to, right? We said a lot of people end up lost financially because one of three things are happening. Either you got bad directions or no directions, which is what I heard last week. Like, nobody ever showed me the map. Nobody ever showed me that. Or you had a map, you know how to handle it, but you made bad decisions. Or you didn't intentionally make bad decisions, but you were distracted. That's how people end up lost when they're driving. Bad directions, bad decisions, or distractions. And that's how people end up lost financially. And this is what the scriptures are starting to do for us. They're giving us a map. It's actually a little bit of a turn-by-turn direction. And it says, hey, here's how you should use your money. The wise man saves for the future, and the foolish man spends all he gets. And there's a little principle. Like, the word doesn't even appear. Let's go back to that slide just for a second. The word doesn't even appear in this verse. But it's a powerful principle. It's the map. It's the word interest. Now, this is not a financial seminar, but we're going to spend just a moment so you can see the wisdom of the scriptures on this and to think how powerful it is if you're on the right side of money instead of the wrong side of money. How true this scripture is and how powerful of a force interest is for good or for bad. So let's just talk about our money, your money, my money. Almost all of us, we're going out to borrow some money to buy a home, right? It's a reasonable debt to take on. There's nothing evil about taking on a home mortgage, and yours probably looks bigger than this or smaller than this, not exactly like this, but this is actually how it works. Like, if you're paying attention, like, hey, you get a mortgage, $175,000, rates are good right now, 4%. You'd have to make an $835 monthly payment over 30 years, which is how a lot of mortgages work these days. Now, that doesn't include your insurance. It doesn't include your taxes. It's just the mortgage. And it'd take you 30 years to pay it off, and in the end, you'd pay $300,000. That's the way interest works. And a lot of people have to do that. Now, just think about this. This is just a picture. Home mortgage. If you had the same mortgage, and you thought, you know what, I'm going to figure out how to make $150 larger payment than I have to every month. $150. And you may not be able to do that in the first year. But in the second year, when you get a raise, or the third year, when you get a raise, you think, I'm going to use that raise for this. Look what happens. This is so powerful. You pay your whole mortgage off 7.5 years earlier, and you would save $35,000 in the end by doing that. You'd have 7.5 years where you don't have a mortgage anymore at the end of this. It's so powerful. Now, that's a reasonable debt. The challenge, of course, for most of us isn't like a mortgage. It's what's called consumer debt. And we use credit cards. There's other things that are in the category of consumer debt. And I'm either going to make you feel better or worse here for just a moment. Consumer debt, the reason that people are living paycheck to paycheck or feel like they're buried is because of this. They've racked up debt. In fact, it's only continually increasing. Did you know this? We crossed the threshold recently of Americans having $1 trillion of consumer debt. $1 trillion. Like, you don't even know what a trillion is. I might as well have said a billion or a gazillion or whatever. Let me try to explain to you trillion, and some of you are going to feel like I'm in good company here, okay? If you wanted to count out $1 trillion, here's what you would do. You would count $1 every second. Do that over a minute. You do it over an hour. In an hour, you could count $3,600. $1 every second. You'd never sleep again. You just keep counting. You keep counting. You keep counting. You do that. At the end of the day, you will have counted $84,000. Right? If you do that and you count that way and you do it for a year without sleeping or eating or doing it, you just count $1 every second. You do it for 2 years. You do it for 20 years. You do it for 100 years. You do it for 1,000 years. $1 every second of every day. You do it for 1,000 years. And then it will only take you 31,000 more years to get to $1 trillion. That's what this number is. And Americans, we just load it on. So average, in the range of the average American debt, $6,800 on credit cards if you carry credit card debt. Now, again, this is not meant to make you feel guilty. I just want you to see it. This is so powerful. Charging you probably 15%, $85 monthly minimum payment. It'll take, if you never add to it, if you say, you know what, this is the day I'm stopping. I'm not adding to that debt. I'm just going to pay off what I have. 35 years. And it'll cost you $36,000. Now, look at this next slide. This is so same amount of debt. Not adding to it. You add $15 to your monthly payment. $15. And you pay it off in 23 years less. And you save $20,000. You figure out how to add a little bit more to it. Think about this. Same scenario, but instead you add $100 to the monthly payment. You pay it off in 31 years less. In 4 years, you'll be done with that debt. And save $26,000. This is real life. When your money would speak to you and say, pay attention. When the wisdom of Proverbs says, a wise man saves for the future, but a foolish man spends all he gets. Or the borrower is servant to the lender. This is what the scriptures are speaking to. They're giving you a map. And they're saying, pay attention to this map. Follow the directions. It's easy to get distracted. It might be why you are where you are, but just stop being distracted and move forward. And when you flip it, it's almost equally powerful. If you had $6,800 saved instead of $6,800 underwater, and you just invested long-term, mutual fund, stock market's actually done better than 8% over a long term, and you kept it in there for that same time, 35 years, you end up with $272,000. That's all I'm saying. The most important thing you can do with your money is to pay attention. Because the way that you and I use money, it will shape the rest of our lives. Here's the second thing I think your money would say to you. It would say, hey, you're in charge, right? For some people, money's in charge. Money is the master. It's what's chasing things. It's what's deciding things. It's what is driving things. And I think your money would say to you, listen, I don't want to be in charge. You're in charge. And I don't know if you ever feel this way. One of the things that's always fascinating to me is after a team loses a sports game, maybe the NCAA championship game this past week, and they interview the coach of the losing team. Whenever one of the coaches sits behind the microphone and says, you know what? I'm the coach. It's on me. I'm the one who's responsible. I always just have so much respect for the person who says that. I mean, that's what the person's saying is I can't, there's nobody else to blame. I'm the one in charge here. It's my responsibility. If it's going to be different next year, it's going to be up to me to take charge and shift the responsibility. And one of the things that Jesus says about your money is he says, this is how it is. You cannot serve both God and money. And the whole idea is money is a lousy god. If you're in the service of your money, instead of your money being in the service of you, you should absolutely dead stop right now and say to your money, you're done being in charge. I'm the one who makes the decisions here. I'm the master of you. Now, there's three scenarios. I kind of described these earlier, but process these with me just for a second. Some of you can mark this box. I won't make you raise your hand. Some of you feel like, I'm behind. I'm behind right now. You know you're digging out of a well. Maybe you're a little bit embarrassed about it. Listen, I'm not trying to generate embarrassment. I can promise you that if you can trust me as your pastor, the transformation that I want to see in your life is someone who would say, you know what, I got to pay attention. Maybe I didn't have a map. Maybe I had a bad map. But I have the map. And it's time to make different decisions. And I get distracted too. He's like, I'm not going to get distracted. I'm in charge here. And my respect for you would just go off the charts if you could acknowledge that you're behind and say, you know what I'm going to do? Monday night, Financial Peace University. I need some help. I need some guidance. There's some tools that will be available. Hundreds and hundreds of people have experienced transformation in life because they humbled themselves and said, listen, I need a map, right? Some of you feel like you're not behind, feel like you're balancing, right? This is kind of the paycheck to paycheck life. And if you're in this category, maybe you probably think you're in this category, I got a live look in on your financial life right now. Watch this. This is your financial life right now. It's perfect, isn't it? Like, it's not off the tracks. Everything's fine as long as everything goes right. And I'm suggesting to you that if you're saying that, like, hey, I'm kind of balanced, I'm kind of paycheck to paycheck, then I think Financial Peace University, Monday night. I know it feels like a commercial. That's exactly what it is. Because I care about you. And I want your life to be different 2 years from now and 5 years from now than it is right now. And I want you to have a peace about this part of your life. You see, this is the wild thing about money. Money doesn't have to be mysterious. There's nothing about money that should be mysterious. There are plenty of other areas of your life where there's mystery. You come and ask my advice about certain things, about love, about raising your teenagers, about why some prayers got answered and some prayers didn't. And I might look at you and be like, I don't know. It's a mystery. But this is the thing about money. It never has to be a mystery. There is a map. There's a certain amount that is coming in, and there's a certain amount that is going out from you, and it can all be known. There's no mystery to it. That means it can change way easier than other things can change. Some of you are in that place that says, I'm peaceful. I'm peaceful. And the whole point of me doing this message and teaching the scriptures, these particular scriptures, is because if you're not, I'm peaceful right now. I so want you to be there. I want you to take the unnecessary stress out of life. When Jesus was teaching, Dan taught through this parable a few weeks ago. One of the parables that he taught, he initiated it like this. He said, again, this is the kingdom of God. It'll be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. And if you remember, the point of this parable is Jesus says, hey, you don't all have the same amount. That's not what I'm trying to say. You don't all have the same amount. He's saying you were all entrusted by God with whatever it is that you have. And you should think about it that way. That whatever it is you have, it's your master's, it's God's, it belongs to him. And the feeling around it for you and me is not, it doesn't need to be a feeling of guilt. It needs to be a feeling of responsibility. You know, one of the things that's always interesting to me when I talk to people, maybe this is just fun for me because I'm the pastor, but people will say certain things to me like, the church should, the church should, the church should. And when they're saying it, they mean the organizational church, like the leadership of the church should, or the budget of the church should, or the organized church should. And whenever someone says the church should, I always have a really fun conversation to remind all of us that we are the church. And for the most part, I agree with people when they say the church should. So like I always ask people, I'm like, hey, do you think the church should be able to live on 80% of its income so that it can be really generous to needs in Northwest Indiana and starting new churches? Do you think the church should be able to live on 80% of its income? When people think the organizational church, they think, yeah, the church should. And I think, like, we're the church. This is an even better one. Do you think the church should account for all of our finances? If at our annual meeting in a couple of weeks, I stand up and I say, hey, listen, been a pretty good year. I can tell you where about 80% of our money went. The other 20%, it's a total mystery to me. I have no idea where the church's money went, that 20%. If I stood up and said that to our group, you guys would be like, let's fire that guy. Let's get someone who knows how to pay attention to the money. And this is what I'm saying, is that we're the church, us. And we should feel that responsibility. It's been entrusted to us. So we carry it out. And I think your money would say to you at this point, there are places, the places where your money's going are easy to know. And so I'm just going to give you a very simple practice that I want to ask everyone in this room to engage in over the next month or two. I don't care whether you're in the peaceful category, the nervous category, the pit in the stomach category. This is a practice I want all of us to participate in, and this is something all of us can do. I used to encourage everyone to budget, right? And a couple things happened when I encouraged people to budget. One is nobody did it. There's that, right? The other is that I actually started to realize, that's the practice. This practice isn't nearly as helpful as I thought it might be, because budgets are all about the future and dreaming and thinking and not knowing. And that there's actually a different practice besides budgeting. It's a way better practice. And it's a pay attention practice. So you probably noticed when you came in, every one of you got one of these envelopes, right? So these are very fancy. You can see we went all out on these envelopes, right? This is the best tool I can give you. Here's what I want to ask you to do. Everyone in this room, do this with me. Do this with me. Over the next month, next 30 days, every time you spend money, just put it in this envelope. Put the receipt in this envelope. And I know you don't always get a receipt. That's okay. You're going to get a debit card statement, a credit card statement. Maybe you can just put your statement in that envelope. If you do something that's like ACH, you can just write it on the envelope. And all you have to do is track it. You just have to keep track of it. You have to get everything in there for a month. And then a month from now, after you've kept it, you get to have the beautiful experience of opening it. If you're married, I want you to do this together. Right? This is going to be awesome. In fact, Valentine's Day is about a month away. I mean, why not? Why not go out for dinner on Valentine's Day and take this envelope with you and then right out there on the table, just dump it all out. I'm telling you, this very simple practice of tracking, of saying, I'm just going to put it all in there, and then at the end of the month, I'm going to pay attention. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to cover my eyes. There should be no, I don't know how that happened, or it seems to me, or that can't be right. It's all right. It's all right in here. You can know. Now, I know at this stage of the message, here's what's happening. There are some of you who hate me right now. And there are some of you, people that hate people are married to, who want to come up and hug me right now. Because you're like, I've been trying to get my husband to do this for years. I've been trying to get my wife to do this for years. It's so wild. Like people in the room who are not followers of Jesus but care about money. You're like, this is the greatest sermon ever. Ever. Finally, my wife who's a believer, she's got to do it now. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's a practice that says, I'm not going to close my eyes. I'm not going to be distracted. I'm going to own my decisions. And at the end of the month, it doesn't have to be a mystery. I'll at least know exactly where it went. And after you do that for 1 month, some behavioral patterns might shift. And then after you do it a second month, some other patterns might shift. And then you at least know. Because the other wisdom of the Proverbs says this: the plans of the diligent, the plans of the people who pay attention, the plans of the people who get a map, follow the directions, and work not to be distracted, the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. I think it can transform your life. I think it'll put you in a spot where you feel a lot more freedom about how to even use the money that you have. You'll be able to do the things that you want to do that you feel like you can't do right now. You'll stop going out to dinner or taking a vacation, and the whole time you're out to dinner taking a vacation, not experiencing joy from it because you know it's just burying you further. The possibility to experience the peace of God is entirely in your control. You're in charge, right? I want to pray for that right now. God, thanks for your goodness to us. Most of us in this room have more than we need. You've given us more than we need. And God, if we could imagine together the life that is not marked by stress or nervousness or just hoping and praying something doesn't go wrong, but creating a little space in alignment with the wisdom of the Scriptures. God, help us. And God, I pray that there would be bravery in this room to keep track of everything over the next 30 days. Take a look at it together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, I really hope that was helpful for integrating faith with life. Listen, if you're in Northwest Indiana, I'd love to have you join us in person. Head over to suncrest.org and plan your visit.